We are so excited you are joining us tonight. My name is Erin Mayer. I am a lead teacher with Beyond Benign, and I am joined this evening by a team of lead teachers and some amazing Beyond Benign staff who will be assisting in various capacities behind the scenes, helping things run smoothly as possible. We are so excited this evening to have Bill McMahon from SUNY Jefferson join us for tonight's conversation. So to get our evening started, we would love to learn a little bit about all of you. Please introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your name, location, and the grade level you represent. Make sure that the name we see on your screen is the name you would like to have printed on your certificate of attendance for this evening. This is how Beyond Benign gets the names to create those certificates and send them to you. Additionally, if you're comfortable doing so, we would welcome and encourage everyone to share your video feed. It just helps foster a more intimate and engaging experience for everyone. We do, of course, understand that there are occasions when that's not possible, and of course, we are understanding of that. If you haven't done so already, please join us on social media if that is your jam by following us at Beyond Benign. We are always excited when we see posts that are sharing not only content from Beyond Benign being used, but also just innovative ideas that our followers are coming up with, as well as inspiring stories within the green chemistry community that we are all a part of. I would also quickly like to remind everyone that by registering for this webinar series, you have agreed to our code of conduct. We are essentially asking for participants to be kind, accepting, and opening to varying viewpoints and opinions. This series is being recorded, and while it is expected that the video feed will primarily focus on our presenter for the evening, your voice and video feed could appear at some point. So by attending this discussion, you have given your consent to allow us to post video and sound of you when we post this recording. As we launch into tonight's webinar, we'd also like to pause for a moment for a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge the unceded land on which Beyond Benign operates. Beyond Benign is located in the state of Massachusetts, which has been the traditional land of the Pawtucket and Massachusetts nations. We acknowledge the history of this land and encourage others to acknowledge the unceded lands and territories belonging to Indigenous nations around the world and wherever you are tuning in from. We would also like to pause for a moment and give thanks to our sponsors who are making this series possible for us this year. As you may already know, Beyond Benign is an organization working to foster a green chemistry community that empowers educators to transform chemistry education for a sustainable future. It's our vision to ensure the chemical building blocks of products used every day are healthy and safe for humans and for the environment. And we believe education is the most powerful and critical component to achieving this. That is why we are committed to pioneering a paradigm shift across the continuum of science education. We work across the education continuum by investing in educators, fostering peer support networks, and developing tools and resources for K-12 through industry to use. We inspire future chemists as well as educate and inform consumers and citizens with our open access K-12 curriculum. We know that the core of our work starts with demystifying and sparking a curiosity and an interest in chemistry early on. Sparking that interest allows us to begin to lay the foundation for those needed green chemistry skills by educating future scientists and training the next generation of innovators. The goal is that by preparing 21st century chemists, they will be the agents of change as they innovate for sustainability and implement sustainable practices within industry. The reality is that there is a demand for green chemistry skills, and we don't currently have the workforce equipped to solve sustainability problems using chemistry. We're so excited to feature presenters in our Observe, Wonder, Think series this year who are working to change this. This year, the monthly Observe, Wonder, Think series will highlight the 12 principles of green chemistry, which you see on the screen right now. We will be bringing these principles to life through the series. Our guest speakers will be sharing how they incorporate the focus principles into their classroom learning activities and labs. And we will make sure to integrate opportunities for discussions throughout each webinar. Tonight's green chemistry focus principle is principle number 12, safer chemistry for accident prevention. According to the American Chemistry Society, safety can be defined as the control of recognized hazards to achieve an acceptable level of risk. Green Chemistry Principle 12 is known as the safety principle. It may be the most overlooked of the 12 principles, yet is the logical outcome of many of the other principles. In fact, it is practically impossible to achieve the goals of the Principle 12 without the implementation of at least one of the others. Since the very essence of green chemistry is to reduce or eliminate the use or generation of hazardous substances, there is an intrinsic connection to laboratory safety. While there are few exceptions, the majority of green chemistry principles will result in a scenario that is also safer. As this graphic of the hierarchy of safety controls from the American Chemistry Society illustrates so well, eliminating exposure before it can occur is a level of safety that we are all reaching for. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest presenter, Bill McMahon. Bill McMahon oversees the management of the biology and chemistry stockrooms at SUNY Jefferson Community College. He is responsible for the preparation of materials and the maintenance of apparatus for all biology and chemistry laboratory offerings. Upon graduation from Carthage Central School, he obtained an AS degree from Jefferson and then an AAS degree in forest technology from SUNY ESF Ranger School in Winnetka. He has since furthered his education in the areas of chemistry and microbiology. Mr. McMahon is also a member of the college's safety committee and is a designated safety officer. He has previous work experience as a field technician for the Natural Resources Branch of the Environmental Division at Fort Drum. He has also worked in land surveying, timber harvesting, and forest management. As a final reminder, before we get started, our goal tonight is to engage in an interactive session with Bill. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them. It is my pleasure to turn over the dialogue to this evening's presenter, Bill McMahon.
Thanks, Aaron. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite, and hopefully I can help some of the teachers out here. I always start off with I don't know, just kind of saying that I don't know. The real reason I do this is because I like to help students, and obviously we have a lot of high school students that come into college here, and so anything I can do to help support the high school and to help them be more successful when they come in here and less scared of chemistry, because they're all scared of, a lot of them are scared of the math and the chemistry. That's really my goal. So, but thank you for all those kind words, and I'll just reiterate any questions at all. Yes, feel free to interrupt me and put them in the chat, or I have no problem. Very, very laid back. Hopefully all the technology will go good, hopefully. So, all right, so I have control now here, right? Let's see. There we go. So yes, I always start this off initially with this nice picture of me from about 10 years ago, if you can see it there. Oh, it looks like I'm burning my face off as I'm doing this chemistry demonstration of lycopodium powder. I assure you that it's just a camera angle being the way that it is, but we do try to engage in a lot of demonstrations with the students just to get them more confident, right, and get them more hands-on, or you know, because of course they're nervous at the beginning. So that's a pretty cool photo. That photo actually hangs in the hallway here at the college, so we reference it quite frequently. But so here, just a little more about the labs here and what I do, just so you have a little more context. So I won't read slides to you or anything, but this graphic over here on the side, the Excel spreadsheet pretty much shows each room, right? So this would be room 2104, and these are the labs that we prep and that we swap out in between, and the instructor's name. And so these are a lot of that's kind of what I manage. So there's a lot of overlap between biology, chemistry, microbiology. So I see in the chat that there's various disciplines that you're all teaching. So hopefully I can contribute somewhat to more than just the chemistry end of it. I will say our school is very good about, you know, about having the support. We go right into the classroom with the faculty and try to help ease that burden on them as much as possible. So what else was I going to say here? So yeah, a lot of preparation of materials, all the ordering, all the materials that go in and out for the lab. So unfortunately, I realize that most of you probably in your high school don't have a me, right? You don't have someone who helps prep your labs, take care your chemicals, order your chemicals, fix your microscope when it breaks, fix the Bunsen burner. So again, another reason I try to reach out is here is I do have a lot of high schools that come and bring equipment in, and we'll try to fix it for them or let them borrow equipment. So just try to be a resource for the community because we are a community college. All right, let's see. And 100% lab coverage. That's something, especially with enrollments dropping and with and positions not being filled across multiple states. It's not just New York, obviously, with enrollments going down in college, but we've been able to maintain that. I can say as an example, yesterday we had a student go into diabetic shock in one of these lab rooms. So it's just huge when you're not the only person there. So I tell you a lot of these things just to try and bring that forward when you go to administration about having coverage from maybe someone next door, because it can be a safety issue when you're the only adult in the lab or you're the only trained professional in the lab and you don't have access to support if you need it, if something goes wrong. So that's a big thing we try to help promote as well, because yeah. All right. So here, yes, we'll try to knock it off. We'll kind of start it off with a couple video tours of my chemical storage area and stock room. And I think someone else will take control of the screen here.
Are we seeing YouTube just to double check? Yes, great, okay. Let me know if the volume's all right as well. Okay.
We're good. Okay, hi, I'm Bill McMahon. I'm going to show you a quick tour of the chemical storeroom and stock room and hopefully point out some of the mechanisms and things we use to help safely store them. Adrian had mentioned that some of the main questions are about chemical storage and disposal. So hopefully giving this little tour will prompt some Q&A so that you have some questions to ask. So the first thing I'll show you, this is our chemical stock room, and we'll walk through here to get to the chemical storeroom, which is off of it. So this is mostly where we'll prep labs. And what I'm trying to show here too is it's a double lock door for the chemical storage. That should be ideally the scenario you have in a high school as well. If not, you could try to work towards that. So this being the back chemical storeroom where I store most of the chemicals. First thing you'll notice is a lot of signage. A lot of this is prompted through audits by New York State Fire or EPA or PESH. So if you have questions about signage or what's proper there, then a lot of times when you have someone come in, they'll actually cite you on that, and then once you put it on, they'll so one of the first things I'll show you is you should always be worried about ventilation to make sure that, so this is just a large piece of way paper that if you don't know if the ventilation is working in your room, you could always check this and see. And if it's blowing very hard this way, obviously that would mean you have positive pressure in that room, and that would be bad. You'd want HVAC to turn it down because you don't want these chemical fumes pumping into your workspace. So it should be slightly negative. It should suck in slightly or be completely flat. I have seen some schools where people are nervous or worried about it and they stuff a blanket underneath there. That would be bad as well. You do want to find out how your stockroom is designed for ventilation so you know what it's supposed to do. And then the second thing would be you should have a total chemical location and inventory so that if any person walked up and said, hey, where's the acetone in this room? Or do you have any acetone in this room? You can quickly flip through and say, yes, I have 20 liters and it's in area 04F. Or do we have p-nitrobenzaldehyde? No, I looked through here and it's not in there. So I could make this available for you as well. I think we do have on the share folder one inventory list that we send to the fire department. Another good thing about this would be think about, like, is this a cleaner, a custodian, an administrator that's looking in there because you're not there? So for example, dichloromethane and methylene chloride, I have them listed under both of those in case they're looking each way, or dextrose is also listed under glucose. Sucrose and sugar, or that idea. So very important so you know how much you have and what you have. So we're gonna pause here. Megan. Hey, we're back. So we'll walk into here and yeah, I'll point out some more things. So yes, just you can scan around a little bit there, Meg, that's fine, and then I'll stand over here and try to talk. Very good. So the first thing I'll point out is we use the Flynn chemical storage method, which is storing by families. What you don't want is just a straight up alphabetical list of everything together with acids next to bases, next to flammables, yada, yada, yada. So that's what you'll see, like O1 would be organic 1. If you can move slightly in here, I actually hung these up too, Meg. So we store them all by these various O, or organic 1 would be acids, amino acids, peracids, yada, you know, and then we have all these labels through. So on that location and inventory, there will be a designation for everything, right? I do have separate flammable cabinets in here, and a corrosive cabinet and 2 acid cabinets that I'll show you a little closer. Depending on your budget and your amount of chemicals, you might only have 1, and they're separated in between, you know. But that's one main thing for storage, is making sure that it is stored properly and things aren't, you know, interacting with one another, fumes, things like that. So let me check my notes here. What else am I thinking? So yes, you probably hear the ventilation running in here. This one is a balanced HVAC, so that means the amount of air getting pumped in is balanced out by the amount taking out. So yours may be slightly different. I'm gonna go slightly behind you, Meg. You go first. Perfect. So if we look down here, I still have my white paper. So this is my suction. A lot of times I'm going to look and make sure that it's actually drawing the air. The ports on the ceiling that are pumping in, you can use this as well. I've been in a few high schools helping out, auditing, you know, or doing consulting, if you went to see the. A lot of times the ventilation isn't even working in your stockroom, so, or in your labs. So make sure you're checking that. That is important, and that will help your chemicals last a lot longer. So beyond the O1, O2, I1, I2 designation, then there are areas of our stockroom, like this is just straight up chemicals in solution. So these are chemicals that are used for multiple labs. The compatibility is fine. All the NaOH is here, all the, you know, copper sulfate, things that don't react, just to kind of save storage. And then we have certain areas designated for labs. So what else should I point out here? So I'm gonna go right this way, Meg. So these are some props I've put out to show as well. So another main thing you're doing, you should be doing inventory at least once a year. We do it twice a year. That's for compliance, but it's also, it makes sense. You're looking for, you know, labels that have gone bad. You can't, you know, they fade over time. You're looking for caps that have degraded, or like this is a very common one, they'll start to break. So not only because this is going to keep your shelf life of your chemical better, it is a citation if EPA, PASH, DEC, anyone comes in and sees these things and they're not legible or they're broke. It's also safer for things to last longer. This is actually a type of bottle, as is this. If you're not familiar with it, it's like a windshield on a vehicle. So it's double layer. So if I were to drop this bottle, it's going to spider web and it's not going to leak. So you can buy these at Flynn or at other chemical companies, but any chemical that's highly hazardous, I recommend you buy these types of bottles and put them in it, because then if it is dropped, then the pickup, you know, spill is minimal. Let's see what else. So, oh yes, so this is a bottle carrier. This is an example of secondary containment. We often put up chemicals this way when they're out being used. So if anything is spilled, it's contained a lot better. Separate pipettes for each. This is also another very common method we'll use for students not to contaminate bottles. The only thing is you got to be cautious that these are cleaned out before you put them back in your storeroom. You wouldn't want a bunch of acid in here reacting or anything like that. So when you're doing your inventory, you're checking shelf life of chemical as well. Something might be hygroscopic, for example, and suck moisture out of the air. So I'd be shaking them, looking at the labels, looking at the caps, testing the plastic. Sometimes they'll shatter. But yeah, that's all very important stuff for inventory and chemical shelf life. You also see all these shelves have lips on them. That also helps, and you don't want chemical storage too high. You'll see certain ones over here that we don't store chemicals up there because it's a hazard pulling them up and down. I have gone into stock rooms, my own included, and had a whole shelf collapse over the weekend, overnight. So I do recommend that, you know, we inspect the stock rooms daily, except for on the weekends. I would say try to do it at least weekly, if not daily, to walk through and make sure, okay, if any smells, any spills, any crusty things on a shelf, any liquid on the floor, all good things to check when you're coming in and looking at those. So we're gonna pause here again and then we'll move on. Okay,
I can answer those questions if you want. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I was going to say, if you want me to address those questions first before I move on, that'd be great. That's no problem. Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Sure. A couple questions in the chat, right? Let me get back to where I'm not the most tech savvy, but
Good evening.
someone help me out. Where was
Here, I can read you. Let's see. So are you required to have that printed or can that be digital? So that was the binder of chemicals outside.
Yes, yes. I know in New York, we're required with our SDS sheets and with our chemical inventory to have a hard copy in case the power's out and someone responds. That may vary depending on your municipality and what you need to do. We also have digital copies of it as well. And there's also our fire department that came through last time is having me upload it to a kind of a first responder site that they made me aware of as well. But for us, we are required to have a hard copy in case, again, there's no power there or internet's down and someone needs to come in. What was the next one? Next question?
The next one, is there a way we can ask for the departments responsible for high school stockroom safety to come in and make recommendations and actually give actionable items for management to follow through on? I want to make my stockroom safer. It's more than 80 years old, but my management is not interested in anything but beyond biology because we are a test-focused school.
Yes, that's a tough situation to be in, isn't it? That's unfortunate. There are some things you can do. I mean, without knowing, like our school, for example, we don't have an EHS, environmental health and science department. A bigger campus, a bigger college will have an EHS department. So it's basically me and the chemist and the chemical hygiene committee, which we'll talk about later on in the slides. So I feel your pain a little bit. That yeah, I'll go into more of it. Some of the big things you can do to help administration try and designate the money to you that you need to make it safe. One of them, you can personally, like in New York State, we have OSHA for industry, but we have a company called PESH, which is Public Employee Safety and Health. So I'm sure whatever state you're in, you're either governed by OSHA or by a similar public health forum. So their entire job is to come in and make sure you as a teacher or me as a lab stockroom person is safe, and that administration is giving us the resources we need, and that our fume hoods are being tested, and that all this is happening. So generally, I would say go to your administrator and talk to them and say, here's the problem. You know, either get a company to come in. This is one of the reasons I went into consulting. I didn't want to. It's because people needed people to go and check their stock rooms and say we need actionable items for them to go forward on. Lab Safety Institute, LSI. It's in my slide deck as well. They're a company you can reach out to get an independent audit as well. But usually if you're able to go forward and get that on the radar administration to say, hey, whatever company or whatever if compliance entity it is, if it's the EPA, if it's PESH, if it's OSHA, if it's whatever, you go and talk to them about that. And then it's within your realm to say, okay, I'm going to make an anonymous tip. If I'm not getting where I'm going with it, and I'm not getting the feedback I need, then you can make an anonymous tip to these government agencies, and your name won't be brought up, and they'll just do a surprise inspection. And when they do that and there's money on the line, then administration starts to listen. So hopefully you don't need to get to that level, but that is one of the main purposes those organizations exist, is to protect you and I as science educators and as industry workers. So hopefully that answers your question. But sometimes it's just playing that game. And I can say up front too, I've had a lot of issues here and with other schools just dealing with facilities departments, trying to get them to get that HVAC to work, or that other issue, or your heating and cooling isn't working and your chemicals are expiring. So again, that's one of the avenues you can go through. A lot of it's building relationships as well, but sorry. Yeah, I'm not trying to say to be aggressive with it. I was just trying to, that's usually, I mean, take a little tact, your administrators. I'm definitely more of a use sugar, not vinegar myself, but I have seen some scenarios where unfortunately that's the only way it can go before they'll actually listen or devote the money needed to it. And every time we're a good campus, we got good communication. Of course, money's tight, but every time PESH has came or any entity has came, most of them have pulled me aside away from the administrators and just said, hey, what do you got going on? What do you need? Whatever. And so also, even if you have a good environment in your campus and they're doing a lot of things, it's still good to reach out and ask for a voluntary inspection for any of these agencies, because that shows you're being proactive. That shows you're not trying to hide anything, and it's showing that we want you to come and tell us what we need to fix because we want to fix it and do the best we can. So hopefully that helps. But were there other ones, or should we go on to the video? I can't.
That is it. So maybe the third video.
Very good.
Can you see? Is it good? Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. So I'll also say when we're inventorying or when we're using chemicals, another best practice is to have lab working bottles. Like these are the bottles that I'll put out for students to actually use, right? Of these sucrose, I would not put this giant bottle of BCS sucrose out for the lab because if the student's contaminated, that would be bad. Same idea when I'm prepping a lab and putting out materials. If the lab calls for 20 mils total of concentrated hydrochloric acid, and I know that's how much the lab's going to use approximately, I'm going to give them about 20 mils. I'm not going to give them 200 mils because they could contaminate it if they spill it, if they drop it. So, for example, if they're using just drops, they're going to have very minimal amount of this chemical out there to use. A little more work on our end up front, but it's worth it in the long run in terms of how much you're going to buy and how much chemical you're going to go through or use or students are going to waste. So yeah, so with working bottles, also when I do an inventory, a lot of times that's our buffer amount. So we might, the stock bottle will inventory how much we have and go off that, how much we need to buy, and then our little working bottles in the lab are a bit of a buffer for our inventory. Another good point about in the share folder, there should be about the chemical inventory that we send to our fire department every year, which is required by regulation, but it also, a good benefit of that is reaching out to your local fire department, those guys, and telling them, I invite them once a year, come to the college, come to the stock room, so that if there's a fire, if someone faints, it's not their first time finding it, you know what I mean? They'll come in and ask questions, they're very good to work with, it's the best thing to do is just invite them. Some years they don't come, they get a new chief, whatever, but get them on your campus and let them know where they are, where all the hazards are. So yes, now acid cabinets, there's many different types out there. I recommend you get a plastic one like we have. Metal will degrade pretty quickly. But in terms of compatibility, it's a little bit of research. You could always ask someone. I can give you some resources. Like one example is that glacial acetic acid and acetic anhydride should always be stored separate from HCl, H2SO4, even though they're in the same family. Why is this? They've just seen studies over the years that somehow the reaction of fumes. So something to be conscious of when you're setting up your storage. What you will see here is any acid, you can see that pretty good. You're going to get acid fumes that build up even with ventilation. So once a year we'll go through and I'll clean this with a trisodium phosphate TSP
Hello?
to help
Hello?
clean up some of those fumes.
There.
I'll try to
Hello.
open
They
this
must
up
be
so you
fit.
can see a
They're
little
not.
bit. Another main thing is to not have too much chemical in stock, right? The old school method would be buy in bulk. You get 3 cases of sulfuric acid and you save some money. Now, obviously, we realize that's a bad idea. So we try to hit it that we only order the amount we're going to use within about a year. There are some exceptions to that. But we have concentrated acids on the top, dilute acids in the bottom, and then all this glacial acetic and acetic anhydride separate because of the compatibility issues. And then this area here is my hazardous waste storage area until it's picked up. So I'll pick up a bottle. You can stay there, Meg. I'll have all the waste labeled up. I'm sure we'll get some questions about waste, but again, just think about secondary containment. If things aren't compatible, if this bottle were to leak, or if this bottle were to leak, or the cap just failed in front of me, that was great in real world. Plastic bags are always helpful as well to see, and I'll show a bottle when I get over there, but oftentimes we'll seal the top of the bottle with some chemical grade tape. So you should have a designated area that's labeled for your waste until it's picked up. An example of another good storage method are these paint cans, and then they will have some super absorbent in it. It's like kitty litter if you can't get that. So if this bottle were to leak, I know that it's going to be contained within that. And then here's some of that nice tape that I'm talking about inside a bag. So the more you work with your chemicals and understand which ones you have, the ones that don't store well. Iodine tends to corrode things. So part of that's just becoming more intimate with those chemicals. If we were to look at this flammable cabinet, for example, this renovation was about 15 years ago. So this is an example of the amount of rust that has shown up on here. And you can see some even on the paint cans. I don't know if you can see this over here, Meg, but the hinges will start. So that's even with proper ventilation. It just, chemicals are going to leak. But the more you can identify which ones are causing these problems and order them in small amounts and keep them more sealed, the longer everything's going to last. Plus, we're not breathing in those or exposed to them as much. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of the stock room and the storeroom. Hopefully it prompts some questions. The other thing I'll point out here, Meg, so I do have extra spill kit materials within this stock room as well, in case there's something that spills when we notice all the shelves caved in. There we go. Alrighty. Can't believe I really said alrighty on a video with everybody here. All right, did we have any newer questions in the chat or not? I got a little sidetracked there.
No, we did not.
Okay, I'll just keep moving along. But again, anytime, feel free to pop any questions in the chat and stop me as I'm going through. I'd rather answer direct questions if applicable. Let's see. There we go. All right, I talked a lot about this already within those videos. I'm just going to scroll over and make sure. Again, I'm not huge on reading slides to people. You guys have access to this and you can read it some. Yeah, the shelf life of the chemical is always an issue. Working bottles, flammables. Let's see. Yeah, I think I hit most of these actually in there, so I'm not gonna, as of sake of time to get to more, let's go on to the next one. So yeah, chemical disposal as well. You saw me in there a little bit in the video talking about disposal. I can say it's not as cut and dry as you would like it to be sometimes, right? Because you're doing a reaction of chemicals. You might be able to just, you might be able to find out what I do with this chemical when it's in this pure state or when this pure state, but now that I've reacted them and there's some byproducts. So sometimes it's tough. So that's where I really go to this, you know, second statement that, you know, when in doubt, you should ship that chemical out, right? Obviously you shouldn't dump it down the drain. There's a lot of resources that I see they're putting in the chat now too that I've used. Feel free to use it, reuse any of mine. Some of these will be based on your state regulation. And it also, with the EPA, for your EPA number listing, it usually is going to go off on the amount of waste that you create in a year. So I go to a lot of high schools that have never shipped out any waste before, you know, so they'll start that out. But one thing I'll say, whenever you're doing that, the amount of waste you create creates your classification, right? So if you're cleaning out chemicals that have been there for 80 years, like the example before, like we've all done, then on that waste list, when you send it out, make sure you denote that, you know, that, okay, this is waste I made this year doing this experiment with this grade. This is waste that I'm getting rid of because it's been sitting around and it's no longer in use. If you do that as you're going forward, it's not going to go against your waste status. For the most part, unless you're a really, really big high school, which I know there are some out there that are, most of us are going to fall under a conditionally exempt small quantity generator status, which basically means we can keep our waste for more than a month or 6 months. So depending on that, and if you have more questions that we can go with it, but the more information, the better whenever you're shipping something out for a quote, because now the company will be able to get a more accurate quote to you. You'll see in the resources that they shared, I actually take photos of all my waste. I take a whole spreadsheet with every amount of information I can about every chemical that's in there, the percentage of it, all this. That gets me the most accurate quote possible. And so then they're gonna send me back the quote, and all of a sudden, if I have all these non-hazardous items on there, then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not going to ship these out. Maybe I'm going to look into these a little more. Or if we have enough money at the time, I'm like, okay, I have no problem shipping out a little bit of non-hazardous, what they call, because what a hazardous waste company that's picking up waste and disposing of it considers non-hazardous, and what you and I as a chemist, especially when you're talking green chemistry, we're going to call it non-hazard items. We're going to consider a hazard. You know what I mean? So let's see more in. Yeah. The secondary containment is very helpful. I've had a lot of bottles that go bad, that will start to leak. And so just having that backup plan basically, and that really makes a big difference. Again, if you have questions on specific chemicals, I can tell you I know a lot about the chemicals I work with. If you ask me about a chemical I don't know, then I'll be honest with you and follow up with it after. But once you start to work with these chemicals, you get a lot more confident with what you're doing. But I see some action in the chat possibly, or no?
No questions, just some comments.
Okay, no problem.
So absolutely invaluable information is in the comments. Yes.
Yes, that's great. All right, we'll move on a little bit here. So yeah, spill kits. I can tell you there's a little video there we'll watch too. I end up making these. I might say it in the video, I can't remember, but just as a way to save a little bit of cost, because I had all those lab rooms that I needed to make. And so yeah, let's click on that link quick and show that video and see if that helps at all.
Chloe, are you going to go? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're across the hall now in the chemistry lab. I'll point out a few things that hopefully will be helpful as well. I've given you, in the share folder should be all the information about these in-house spill kits that we've made. So I'll just show you some of the items quick. But I designed these in a way that, yeah, if it's a facilities worker, a custodian, a new adjunct, you know, not necessarily a science person, in terms of what these items are and how they're labeled and the directions in there. So yeah, feel free to reuse any of that. But basically all you have to find out is, you know, is it an acid, is it a base, or is it a solvent? And then you have extra sand to just keep things from going around. And then there's baggies and gloves, and so I always tell any of them, if I were to get a phone call at home, you know, oh, it's this chemical, then I can say, okay, yeah, just put an absorbent pad on it, and once it's soaked up, throw it in a trash bag and put it in the hood, or, you know, or just, you know, leave the room and I'll be there in a minute, depending on what chemical it is and what's going on. Obviously, if the hazard's too high, then no one should try cleaning it up. You should just evacuate. But yeah, these are, you can buy commercially made, pre-made ones. We had to do 7 or 8 of these, so it made sense for us to do it in-house. So there are vendors that you could just buy it from if you don't want to make your own. But the idea is to, anyone that's in there, just become comfortable with it and understand how to use it, and, you know, makes people a lot more comfortable if they have seen it before and actually gone through it. And so what I'll also point out here, again, I think I said in the last video, but in that back hood in our lab setup, those are the hazardous chemicals where we're only going to put out a small amount of it. I'm not going to put out all this HCl if they only need 100 milliliters. And also, usually in the lab, we'll have a lab of 20 to 24 students. We'll have reagents set up in the back on a cart, and then also up front, so the students can go to either or to get their, you know, reagents. But when it's a very hazardous chemical that we identified, we only put out that 1 bottle and leave it in the hood in a secondary container to signify to everyone that it's more hazardous. So an obvious question would be, how do I know which ones are hazardous, right? I'll go into that more during the Zoom, but for a lot of times it's just getting to understand the chemical and using it and asking questions and looking at different things. An SDS, for example, can be a great tool or it can be a horrible tool. I can tell you right now, I'll look through different companies and 5 of the SDSs will have no good information. And then I'll find one from one company that actually I can tell someone that's in a science background made this and it's helpful. So long story short, if you don't know, just educate yourself and ask around until you do believe what's on the SDS or not. Unfortunately, inspectors and auditors will even tell you that a lot of times it's tasked to the secretary at the chemical firm. They make an SDS, so it's just a boilerplate copy of contact your local whatever, and this, it's no real good information. So I don't say that to discourage you. I say that because it's like anything else. You got to fight through the weeds to find the good information. But ultimately, you won't use a chemical unless you're comfortable with it, right? So anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah, so making sure that those chemicals and the users are as safe as possible. I will even sometimes put out chemicals in these actual containers if it's an extra working bottle. Like this is my stock bottle, this is my working bottle. The instructor knows, okay, when we're gonna go to use it, we're gonna unwrap it, we're gonna use it, and then we're gonna wrap it right back up, seal it back up, leave it in the hood. And then if you look in this far corner, you should designate a spot in your lab as well for hazardous waste. So this is generally, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is generally the hood where we'll put these waste bottles, and everyone knows that. Ventilation isn't on currently because it's too loud. But so yeah, beyond that, just a good layout of the lab. There's a lot of resources out there of how to design them or improve your lab layout if needed. But again, hopefully this prompts some more questions for the Zoom. Thanks. I really can't stand hearing my own voice on video, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. I did see about SDS, I think one question came in. Is there a particular company that had more reliable SDS based on your experience? Not necessarily. There's some that are good. It depends on the chemical a lot of times too. Because let's say I use Fisher Scientific a lot. I use a lot of the, you know, but sometimes they're subcontracting through another one. So I order it from Fisher, but then I think I'm getting a Fisher chemical and it ends up coming from this third party one. But overall, I think Flynn Scientific is very good. I sing their praises a lot, and I don't get any kickbacks for that or anything, but Flynn Scientific has a lot of resources. Generally, I would say of any company, they're probably been the most helpful overall. You can literally just take your chemical inventory list like you have, and once you make it, and you can send it to them, and they'll have actual chemists go through it with you line by line and say, hey, maybe if you don't need this one, you should get rid of it, or this one can tend to form explosive peroxides. How old is it? So Flint Scientific, I would say, is generally very good. Once you look at more SDSs, you can see like they don't have any information with them. It'll be like not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. Or like I said, contact when it's storage, or when it's disposal, it's just contact local entity. So unfortunately, those are the ones where I really look for more until I can find one that has, most of them are going to have the physical data. They'll have the boiling point, the melting point, and all of that. But when you're getting into, storage concerns and health concerns and things like that, it's hard to tell. Or it's easy to tell when you're going through if it's any good. But I'd say for most chemicals, I've been able to look. Google helps a lot. Obviously, you're just searching that SDS and looking for different ones, and eventually you'll find one. I don't know how familiar most of you are with it, but another good example I go off of is if under the health hazards within the SDS, if there's actual LD50 data it'll be LD50 oral rat, LD50 human. If there's actually those on there, I can say right away when I get to that portion, I'm like, okay, this is going to have real data. Someone spent some real time studying this and documenting this. And so a lot of times if you have that health exposure in there, I know it's pretty good going through. Sigma Aldrich, yes, I've had good experience with Sigma Aldrich as well, I can say. And then Flynn, and yeah. So good. Was there other questions? Did I miss any? Let's see.
That was it.
All right. Very good. Spill kits. Yes. And I can say, knock on wood, we put together those spill kits quite a long time ago. I'd say at least 8-10 years ago. We haven't had to use one yet. So hopefully that continues. So yeah, I'll talk a little more about our safety program in general and some of the different aspects we use. That photo you see there is just a board that hangs outside one of the chem labs that we use to promote some safety items and chemistry and lab stuff all together. But so yeah, these are kind of some key components. So again, a lot of these will be my templates will be right in that share folder, and that you can use to build off of. But we start out with the lab policy and procedure, these safety contracts that we have every student acknowledge the first day of class. I'm sure some of you have heard about this before. It's been out for quite a while. But it's very helpful. It's a very helpful tool at the beginning of the semester. And it also, covers you liability wise. I know in New York with our school size, I have to keep those signed contracts by our students for 70 years. So basically until they've passed away is the assumption. And there's multiple reasons for this. One common one is if all of a sudden a chemical we've been using for a long time becomes a carcinogen and we don't know about it now, but we know about it 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So that's one example of it. So they are an actual safety contract that we do as a college keep in storage and with our insurance company as well. They look at those. The chemical hygiene plan, that's always, I laugh because it's a great tool. It's a great thing. Inevitably it probably will come up about the chemical hygiene officer position within your school or within your organization. And I can talk more about that. I'll just, not trying to be negative. I can say I'm definitely the chemical hygiene officer functionally for the lab science area. Unfortunately, the way SUNY works and the way New York works is there has to be a chemical hygiene officer for the entire campus. So that would be like me. I'm not EHS, I'm chemistry and science. And so I'm not willing to be in charge of all the waste created by facilities through ballasts and through asbestos. And so I would just say, as a general rule, if you are involved with that, which you should be, verify within your state if you're the chemical hygiene officer for your entire school or if you're just for the science area. Our art department, we have a lot of other departments that generate waste as well. It's not just me in chemistry. So that can become an issue. Unfortunately, again, your EPA listing for your waste is designated by your entire school. So, I have to kind of communicate with facilities if they're putting out a big one or we're putting out a big one in terms of our total generator status. But so but I can say our chemical hygiene plan, we do it very functionally within our department. So a lot of checks and balances. Anytime we're bringing in a new chemical, introducing a new experiment, it's not just the chemist or just Bill in the stockroom saying, this sounds like fun, we'll go get it. You know, it's a group of professionals that can look at it, give feedback, have experience, say, okay, what's this cheaper alternative? What's this greener alternative? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So going forward, before we requisition and purchase any items of change, we're going to bring it through this committee. So that can be very helpful. And, you know, it's not just, we'll have a member from the nursing department on there, and people from facilities, people from these other areas that also create waste on campus, not just us. Emergency response plan, most schools have those as well. That's another way to just tie into that safety program. Sorry, we got a question coming in or just a comment?
The comment was CHP are for labs. The rest of the campus probably does not fall under the OSHA laboratory standard. The laboratory standard is where the CHP and CHO come from.
I would agree with that to a point. But again, there are various, so for the lab standard, that is correct. Generally, when I can say functionally from when administration has come in before and tried to say we need a chemical hygiene plan because it's required federally by law, you do as a campus need a chemical hygiene plan. We have a chemical hygiene plan lab standard here, which is just for the lab. And then there's a separate chemical hygiene plan that encompasses the entire campus, is how we've done it here. Unfortunately, a lot of the high schools I've gone into, administration may come down and say, okay, we've had this directive. We have to have a chemical hygiene plan for our entire building, depending on if it's K through 12 or whatever, either way. And sometimes I've seen that fall on us as scientists within there, and we are by default expected, or it's you know what I mean? So I was just trying to clarify that whatever part you're going into, just verify that it's that portion, because the entire campus, the entire building, including facilities and the art department, is required to have a chemical hygiene plan in terms of, but it is different than the lab standard. Okay. And emergency response plan, and then all of our, we just try to bring safety to the forefront as much as possible through all of our departmental meetings, our campus safety meetings, and then these voluntary inspections and audits like I spoke about before. And some of these next slides we'll talk a little more about some of each of these. So here's just an example of them. I highlighted one of the main ones we use, which I think is by far one of the most important ones, because most of the accidents I see from students is because they're not comfortable with what they're doing, right? They're just nervous, right? We've all seen this as educators. I can say, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but we have a lot of adult learners here, and they're just so nervous. They have the Bunsen burner, and then I talk to them, and they've raised 5 kids that are out of the house, and they've used a gas stove at home, but they're just a nervous student. So just trying to get them to be 100% comfortable and willing to learn and willing to be able to take in that information. That's the vast majority of our accidents, is people are just not comfortable with what they're doing. They're rushing, they're nervous of, so that is huge. But again, both of this is a double-sided form, a sheet that they sign, and these are the signatures that we keep when we sign on our lab drawers. But feel free to take a look at those and adopt any of them that we use. Our chemical hygiene committee within science too, that's where we create these policies and augment these policies. So again, a new chemist or Bill can't just change one of these lines. We do it as a group. For all of them. And we do have them for chemistry, for physics, for field biology, for all the different disciplines going through, because they have different needs, obviously. I think, I thought I had a picture up next, but I do not. Customize each class. I've kind of talked about this already. Quizzing on it is important. I think we have a lot of faculty that really are safety conscious, and they'll actually give on their first quiz. That might be some of that lab orientation stuff. That seems to be helpful. A lot of good links here that you can click on if you haven't already, or if you don't know about them already. I won't waste time with them now, but so there's the picture. Someone commented about the aloe plants in the lab at one point, so I was hoping that was going to come up. So I can tell you the sole purpose of me propagating all of this aloe is because students burning themselves bending glass and doing intro to burner, Bunsen burner labs. So so the accident reports, yes. I think my next slide is actually a copy of the accident report. I have it in there as well for you guys to use or for everyone to use if they would like. But the best way to describe it is that, because sometimes I need to get the buy-in from faculty, right? I need to get buy-in from a new faculty or an old faculty member that's been there a long time and doesn't want to, change their ways. And so within this the accident reports, a big way to look at it is anytime a student just burns themselves a little bit, or they make a little cut or whatever, we still document it, right? And so it helps us reassess everything that's going on. So then in the department meeting, we've had these accident reports, and sometimes it's the same old thing. They burned themselves, they were nervous, there's no change on our end. But it still is showing, it's showing to any auditor coming in or any inspector coming in that you have a plan in place and that you're actually doing it instead of just talking about it, right? So I probably will reference it in another slide. SUNY Canton is a college not far from us up north, and they had a large fire at their chemistry lab that burned down an entire building not that long ago. I'd say, well, it was probably 2012, so I guess it was a while ago now. But a lot of these changes we brought in was after that scenario happened. Sorry. So, and whenever there's a real accident, hopefully there never will be one, right? But if someone really gets hurt in your lab and comes forward and they come in and do an inspection and it's just like, oh, we've always done safety, and you don't document that you had accident reports, and you don't document that you had safety contracts, and you don't document all of this, then you're going to be in a bad spot, bottom line. Because you probably could still be being very safe, but you don't have any of it documented. So that's another reason, above and beyond the fact that it's good for the student if the cut get infected, if you found out that there was chemical or anything like that. But I'm getting the buzzer on time, I think. How much time do I have left? Let's see. 5 seconds?
Well, it is 4:59, and I know we started a few minutes late, but
That's fine. That's fine. I'd rather quit here and open it up for questions if we have time than to go on. People can look at this after, if that's what we'd like to do, or just hand it over, whatever you think.
do we have any questions from the participants? You can put your mic on or pop them in the chat. Okay. All right. So
We have a raised hand,
oh,
it looks like.
we do. Let's
Jose.
see. Who is that?
It's Jose. Jose, if you want to.
Okay.
Can I go?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, Jose, Booker T. Washington Senior High School, Miami, Florida. My question is there like a course or a safety course that's available to high school teachers from the ACS, something that won't necessarily cost me money, but it's something that, I can do like maybe on my planning, or, when I come home for like an hour or two and just work on that? Do you know if any
Yes.
such thing exists?
Absolutely, yes. I know that ACS does have some paid and unpaid, and again, Flynn Scientific has a lot that are very good, I would say, as well. That can go towards that, depending on your needs for professional development and all that. There's a lot of good resources from Flynn Scientific, and from LSI is another one. I encourage you all, if you get a chance, to just finish even just scrolling through that PowerPoint I had, because I have links to some of the ACS ones, and LSI is just Lab Safety Institute. And I'll give a plug for another one called, it's NAOSSM, National Association of Science Material Managers. You'll see the link in there. So that's people like me across, it's a nationwide organization. So you go on their website, they have a whole actual safety area that links to the ACS and to LSI and all that. And actually I'll shoot the link to that National Association to Erin after this, so she can send it out to everybody. But yeah, ACS is a good one as well. And thank you for your question. I got another one, hopefully. I love questions.
Any others out there? Well, and we will be sharing Bill's contact information too. So I'm sure that he would be happy to answer them. It sounds like, if you have them, as you kind of dig through these resources. He's got some awesome stuff, and we did not get to get it all the way through it. So those resources will be coming out within the next couple days. I'm going to go ahead and let me share my screen one more time. I'm going to wrap things up here. And first of all, just a huge thank you to Bill for sharing your expertise with us tonight. I mean, I have a bunch of notes here, such great stuff. And I feel like oftentimes as secondary science teachers, I don't know that we, at least in my experience, I have not gotten the training that I think I need to have to make sure that the lab storage is as safe as it should be. So I appreciate all your resources. So I just wanted to share a couple of upcoming events before we sign off. First of all, I would like to invite everyone to our next Observe, Wonder, Think webinar series, which is 4 weeks from today, I believe, October 19th. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you are planning on attending the upcoming SANUS conference in, I believe it's in Syracuse, I would like to let you all know that there is a presentation workshop being held by lead teachers Stephanie Loomis and Scott Carlson called Inspiring Students with Sustainable STEM and Green Chemistry. So that would be a wonderful event or workshop to attend. Also, on the third Wednesday of each month, starting next month, October 18th, Beyond Benign is offering another interactive webinar series featuring community leaders and active practitioners in the field. There will be small group discussions, resource sharing, and network opportunities with both industry leaders and the higher ed community. Participants are asked to bring their own resources and share them with the community. The meeting time of 12 to 2 might not be convenient for K-12 teachers, for obvious reasons, but if you do register for the webinar, you will have access to all the recordings just like you do for Observe, Wonder, Think series. And feel free to share this opportunity with other educators and administrators without classroom schedules to increase their understanding of green chemistry as well. And finally, speaking of upcoming events, I would love to take a moment to mention something that we at Beyond Benign are really excited to be offering next month. We will be launching a joint initiative between Beyond Benign and the ACS Green Chemistry Institute with support from the sponsors that you see on the screen. The Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community is going to be a space for all of us to share, connect, learn, and grow. The research hub for the GCTLC will host a central online searchable library of green chemistry education resources that include but are not limited to lab experiments, lecture materials, and in-class activities. The hub is going to allow users to create profiles, connect and network together, share ideas and resources, collaborate, and give and receive feedback, as well as mentorship opportunities. It will also include job postings for students who are looking for careers in the green chemistry field. And you will also find forum discussions, event listings, curated resource questions, and so much more. We are very firm believers that if you tell teachers about a resource, that they will know about it, but if you give them a resource, they will use it. And using it is a difference Beyond Benign and the GCTLC want to make with this effort. Finally, if you haven't done so already, please scan the QR code you see on the screen for more information about green chemistry teaching and learning community and to remain current with our latest news and updates. And one last time, I want to give a huge shout out to Bill for sharing his time, his talents, and his awesome positive energy for the green chemistry community. And thank you participants for tuning in, sharing your time and being present in tonight's webinar. We really look forward to seeing you again next month. Good night and take care, everybody.